Geauga Parks, and thank you everyone for coming. I just wanted to mention that this is a Zoom meeting, not webinar, so everyone is on the tile, either your video or just your name. If you can start your video, that'd be nice so we can see you all. Also, you are automatically muted at the end of the presentations from our award recipients. There will be an opportunity for questions and answers. At that point, you can unmute yourself. If you want to raise your hand so that we know that you have a question, or you can just jump in. This is going to be pretty informal. I think that's the only. Yeah, I think that's the only thing about, oh, I did want to say one other thing. If you're not real familiar with using Zoom, if when people are presenting, if you want to have a focus just on their headshot for the presentation on the view, the little view option on my screen, it's in the upper right. I'm not sure where it is on everybody else's, but if you click on speaker view, then you'll get just little tiles of all the attendees with the person who's speaking getting a bigger field of the screen. Sometimes that's an easier way to watch individual presentations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barb Partington, who's going to make some introductory comments. You're muted, Barb.
I can't wait till we do in-person activities. I'm going to stick with my notes so that I don't go over my allotted 2 minutes on this, but I do have my sidekick here is Dave Shoulder. When he does the introductions halfway through, we'll switch places. Welcome everybody. Welcome to our webinar featuring the students and teachers of Geauga County who are recipients of the 2 awards given by Protect Geauga Parks actually in 2020. I'm Barb Partington, as Ann had said, and Ann, thank you for being our Zoom captain on this. I want to say a little bit about Protect Geauga Parks. This is really mostly for the those of you who are the recipients of the awards. I think some of the rest of you have heard this before, but I'm going to take a minute and say that the mission of Protect Geauga Parks is to promote, support, and actively campaign for conservation, preservation, and protection as the primary mission of our parks. We're a 501c4 organization, and we do our work by focusing on 2 things, and that would be advocacy and education. So in 2016, Protect Geauga Parks decided to act upon this goal by funding a scholarship to be given to high school seniors who show a commitment to conservation and an interest in pursuing a career in one of the areas of natural sciences. In 2016, we awarded the first of our 2, we awarded our first 2 scholarships, and we've been able to increase that to 3 students each year since that time. So people have asked, why is this named the Bob McCullough Memorial Conservation Scholarship? Bob McCullough, who passed away in 2016, was a longtime Burton resident. He and his wife, Mary, who died last year, and their family had a passion for the natural world. Bob was a biology teacher in Burton, Jefferson, and West Geauga, retiring in 1990. In addition to many of his community activities, Bob became a volunteer for the Geauga Park District. He was named Park Board Director and served longer than any other Park Board member to date. He served for 48 years. During this time, he saw the parks grow from 2 parks to 18 parks. He mentored hundreds of people in this regard, in his regard for respect and protection of the rare and natural habitat of Geauga County. His legacy continues in his students, his family, and in those in Geauga County and beyond who respect importance of conserving and protecting nature. At Protect Geauga Park, we try to continue this vision. We thank the McCullough family for allowing us to name this scholarship in Bob's honor. We think he would be proud of all the students who embrace the study of conservation, and he has definitely influenced a lot of science teachers out there. We also want to take a moment to thank the Foundation for Geauga Parks for funding one of our scholarships. We appreciate our partnership with this fine organization and thank our supporters whose donations fund the rest. To apply for a scholarship, students were asked to write about how their projects and activities demonstrated the importance of conservation to them and what they would see as their best opportunity for contributing to the protection of the natural world, as well as provide references from school personnel or adults who are familiar with them. Prior to 2020, we gave out these awards at the Heroes of Conservation event, kind of our gala event held in Munson Township each year. Due to the pandemic this year, all bets were off for an in-person. So several of us furtively met with the 3 student scholarship winners and separately with the 2 teacher grant winners. We were masked, we were at social distances, we were all afraid of each other at that time. We met in the parking lot at Westwoods, we gave them their awards and briefly met them. So today we want to give these students, now graduated seniors, an opportunity to share their presentations with PGP supporters and allow us to record this so that we can show this to others as well. The first half of the program will be to hear from the students with the recipients of the teachers grants will be following. So without further talk from me, I'm introducing first Ryan McCullough from Hawken High School.
Thank you for that introduction. It's great to meet all of you. Some of you, as mentioned, I met earlier this year. But for the rest of you, it's nice to meet you. My name is Ryan McCullough. I recently graduated from Hawken School. In my application essay, I largely focused on in-school activities, one of the largest being a Friday for Future club. And while we weren't officially affiliated with the Friday for Future organization, our mission was, it was a very student-driven club that me and another student founded. And we essentially looked at ways that within our school, we can make our own actions more sustainable. We can lead by example. And so one of the ways we did that was through promoting more plant-based alternatives at lunch. We met with the student and faculty senate to talk about energy usage and how we can make that more efficient. And also we kind of worked to install a foundation for a recycling program and also for a composting program. So those were all sort of things that the school has had interest in developing, but they never really had a student or students to really spearhead it. And so that was really fun to experience that and to bring that sort of side of conservation to Hawken. And that's something I really enjoyed and I'm looking to do in college. With regard to college, I'm going to the University of Miami in Florida, and I'm going to be studying marine science, marine biology and ecology. And so that ties into my sort of larger theme of conservation. I've always been passionate about marine science, but I think what's driven me with conservation is simply how it's a unifying issue. I think conservation, the natural world, all these are things that we experience, like no matter where you are in the world, no matter how old or young you are, you all experience and you all see the value in that. Whether it's going on a walk and you experience the mental health benefits, or whether it's your livelihoods depend on it, conservation really connects to everyone's life. So it's something that I think is just impossible to ignore, and something that really should be focused on a lot more than it is. So since the Friday for Future Club and since submitting my proposal, I worked with my school. We do senior projects at the end of the year. So I worked with the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo, and I worked with their marketing team and also with their conservation team. So I did a short video detailing their conservation for their tiger cubs. They recently birthed 2 cubs and they got 1 from another zoo. And so with all that new publicity, they really wanted to make sure their audience knows about these tiger conservation efforts and how they can help. And so I played a role in developing, gathering footage and developing a video sort of showcasing and narrating that. And then one thing I'm kind of looking forward to engaging with at Miami is interesting. So on a tour there, they had a flyer that I found that was simply students looking for, more ways to engage with environmental science and conservation. There's this contest. I forgot what the prize was, but essentially was just send in your ideas, give us a price range and let's just talk about it. And it's just that open dialogue about conservation that is something that I'm really looking forward to engaging in and really looking forward to leading. And so that's really my first goal kind of going into college, is how can I find the conservation oriented people, and then how can I get in, how can I help lead that, and how can I really experience that in a new location. And I think that's the best way to set myself up for success. But all of this is really attributed to a lot of the confidence, but also a lot of the community they've gotten from Protect Geauga Parks. So it's really been a beneficial experience to apply and to meet these people and receive this award. So for that, I'd say thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I think we're allowed to clap. Oh. All right, Alexa, I see you there. You're next.
So hello everyone, my name is Alexa Busby and I recently graduated from Kenston High School. I've been fascinated with nature and have really loved the outdoors since a very young age. And as I kind of grew up and became aware of modern threats to the environment, I knew that being involved in the fight for environmental conservation was something I really wanted to be a part of. I'm constantly amazed by the intricacy and the beauty of nature and the important role it plays in our society. The protection of nature is an invaluable resource and has really driven my commitment to conservation both in my school and in the community. At Kenston, I've been involved in our school's environmentalist club, Envirothon, of which I've been president for 2 years. The club is mainly in charge of recycling at the high school, and just last year we started a marker recycling program that partnered with Crayola in order to further reduce plastic waste by recycling old markers into building materials. Outside of school, I actually own my own online Etsy store called Project Planet, and that's mainly what I wrote about in my essay. And at my shop, I sell handmade bracelets that are like nature themed, and then I donate all of my profits from the store to environmental conservation organizations. I started this project during March of last year, kind of when COVID started, because I just felt like I really needed to do something for the environment after school shut down, and I felt like I wasn't able to make the same impact by going to school and working with Envirothon, so I kind of decided to do something on my own. So that's when I started this project. And over the last year, I've raised more than $1,000 to donate to various organizations, including the Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife Fund, Earth Justice, and the Ocean Agency. The project has been extremely rewarding and has allowed me to combine my creative skills with my passion for the environment. And I wanted to share my screen so I could show some pictures of the bracelets. So let me know if you can see that. Someone could tell me.
Yeah, it's coming through.
Okay, cool. So yeah, these are just some examples of the bracelets that I sell on my shop, just like that. And yeah, I make them all by hand and then sell them on Etsy. And it's really cool because I've been able to sell them to people like all over the country, and I sold some to people in Canada. So it's really been like a very cool thing to see all kinds of people around the world who are supporting my business. So this fall I plan to attend the College of William and Mary, which is in Williamsburg, Virginia, and I plan on double majoring in both biology and environmental science. And at William and Mary, I'm planning on joining some of the school's environmentalist clubs and possibly doing undergraduate research or community service in the field of environmental science. My passion for nature and conservation are really the main influence for my plans in the future and educationally, and I really hope to have a career where I can help create solutions to these environmental issues. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to protect Geauga Parks for awarding me this scholarship. It's really greatly appreciated, and I'm really excited to be able to continue my journey and commitment to the environment at William & Mary. So thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. I don't know about everybody else, but listening to Ryan and Alexa sends sort of some chills up my spine, feeling like there's some hope for the future. So we're going to ask you to talk to us once a week about something. It's really very nice to hear. It's really nice to hear from you, and your work is really, it's great, and we really appreciate you sharing it with us. So Keegan wasn't able to come, and he sent me some things to say, but he really sort of underestimated himself on that. So I'm going to summarize some of what he wanted me to tell you, and I'm also going to include some vignettes from his teacher references that had sent in, which were quite remarkable. So Keegan said he grew up in a family of avid outdoorsmen. He spent all his free time in the woods. He was learning how to, from his family, participate in hunting and fishing. He realized that as an outdoorsman, he had a goal to help preserve our natural resources for future generations. I quote from his vignette, "It is so cool to look at the unique plant and animal life within the ecosystems of Northeast Ohio," unquote. For his Eagle Scout project, Keegan built fixed fish structures and monofilament fishing line recycling centers at Beartown Reservation. The fish structures provide the fish of lower Bear Lake habitat to hide in and reproduce in, and the monofilament recycling centers allow people to discard their fishing line in a safe place, preventing the fishing line from harming animals in the environment. Keegan wrote about his dedication to wildlife conservation, including his work actively managing and maintaining 12 acres of marshland in Vickery, Ohio, where he works to promote the growth of emergent vegetation such as duck potato and barnyard grass, providing good habitat for small fish, amphibians, and waterfowl, and help remove the invasive species that deter that. He said his marsh management skills ensure that there will be marshland for future generations to enjoy. So I want to add some information from the essay he sent in with his application. He said, quote, "The amount of time I spend in the marsh is for the preservation of a resource that I care about for future generations. I believe that the education of America's youth is critical to the preservation of our natural resources." From his teachers, I have, in quote, "Keegan is passionate about the environment, making the world a better place. He earned his Eagle Scout Award by completing the monofilament fishing line project. He was also one of only 33 people in Ohio to be selected to serve a one-year term on the Ohio Teen Conservation Advisory Council, where he worked with people throughout the state to find ways to get youth involved in the outdoors. From his application essay, I learned that in this program, he worked with hosting educational youth nature hikes and in getting more nature resource education into schools. He said, "It is hard to get the public to gain interest in protecting a Kettle Lake ecosystem without educating the public about the environmental significance of a Kettle Lake. In my opinion, if we do not put further emphasis on national resource education, all of the conservation work we do today would be squandered because there would not be a future generation to continue our conservation work." He was also an active member of Kenston's Giving Garden Club, whose mission is to foster an appreciation for the outdoors, to connect the community by donation of fresh produce, and to provide hands-on experience in gardening and resource conservation. Another teacher wrote, "I have known Keegan for 4 years. I have had him in 3 separate classes, including honors geology, honors biology, and human anatomy. He talked about how Keegan says the outdoors brings him peace. Keegan would always be able to tell him where the fish were biting. It was so invigorating to have a student who remains positive and excited about science." Keegan tells us he plans to major in integrated science at Kent State University and become a high school science teacher. Bob McCullough would be proud. So I would like to publicly thank Keegan. We're sorry he can't be with us this evening, but we look forward to hearing all of his future activities. Thank you, Keegan. We're going to now switch gears a little bit and move on to the teacher grants. So I'm going to move my chair over and I'm going to change my name to Dave Partington, who's going to introduce this part.
Oh, am I there? Am I there yet? There I am. Good evening, everybody. So glad you came tonight for this presentation by Protect Geauga Parks. This is the teacher grant. What's that? Can we
I'm
get rid of
changing your
okay,
name.
I'm changing my name. I've got an alias. Okay. This was the first year that we awarded teacher grants. And we began this process in late April and May of 2020, when the only reference I had for Corona came out of a bottle. So it was quite a learning experience. We developed our entire project in the summer, and then created applications for teachers in August and asked them to submit in early October, and we were able to make the decisions at that time. We still hadn't had any concept at that point in time of the virus, much of the virus, but we did, we're stifled by this, and I'm sure some of the two teachers who talked to us will reference that and the difficulties that they had in making that happen. But we were very glad to be able to give each of our two teachers $1,000 teacher grant, and we hope we can do this again next year. Our first recipient is Alan Duncan, and he's one of several folks from West Geauga High School, and they've got an ongoing program in aquaponics, hydroponics, and he's going to explain that. And then I'll introduce Natalie Hudick. So Alan, take it away.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see everybody here on Zoom. Bear with me for just 1 second as I share my screen. Let's see here. Okay. All right, we should be good to go here. Okay, so as they alluded to, coronavirus was a thing, and it made teaching a specific challenge, one that I'm glad I got to do. I think it made me a better teacher as far as getting all my online sources together and a professional with using Zoom as best as we could be. But I truly wanted to thank you guys for this grant, because it was the springboard to the new class that we started teaching at West Geauga that I have been developing, which is called STEAM. So I'll give you a brief introduction to that in just a second. So this grant was used to go to the aquaponics and hydroponics program that was part of the STEAM class that we're now offering at West Geauga High School. So STEAM, I don't know who's familiar with the acronym or not, so I'll just kind of quickly go over it. It's science, technology, engineering, art, and math. A lot of people hear STEM. We just don't want to forget about the art people, so we throw the A in there, and it really makes for a good time. So essentially what we're doing is we recognize that it's not a new class, but more so it's the merger of all the classes combined. And we look for ways for our students to apply what they're learning in all of their other subjects and make it more meaningful to them. A lot of times I've heard, being a high school teacher, when am I ever going to use this again? How does this apply in my life? When I go to graduate, when am I going to need to use Newton's first law? So this shows them a lot of different applications here and can provide them and my fellow teachers with a more meaningful application to what they're learning in the classroom. So one of the first things that we did in STEAM was the aquaponics and hydroponics unit. So for those of you that may not be aware, hydroponics is a process where you grow plants in anything but soil. So it could be dirt, it could be water, it could be, dirt. It could be sand, it could be gravel. It could be like a little peat moss kind of material. And then we had aquaponics, which just adds another little complication to it, because now we're doing it with fish, and we're using fish and introducing them into the program to help provide the extra nutrients into the environment as well. And the students really grasped and latched onto this program. They were allowed to explore topics of sustainability. So with our population booming and growing, especially people that are living in the city, how can they create their fresh produce and be able to feed themselves if they wanted to? it applied with physics. We were learning about light. We were learning about fluid mechanics of how much water to get to the plants at a certain amount of time. We learned about the biology, the photosynthesis of it, the chemistry, what kind of chemicals did we need to introduce into the water to make sure all of the plants were growing appropriately. And then I like to call it engineering carpentry, because they actually had to go out and build these devices as well. And this was a godsend, essentially, because this grant provided me the ability to allow students to branch out into different stations. So we had multiple ideas that these students were allowed to pursue that you'll see here in a little bit. And it was really an awesome thing to watch. So as I said, hydroponics was what some of the students wanted to use or pursue, and they had to research the basic design, the plants, what plants could be grown, could they yield results from, what kind of lighting needs did we need, what kind of nutrient or pHs did we need, or fertilizer to put into the water, and things of that nature. And one of the things that we used the grant money for was to purchase our light source. And this was one of the lights that we used or bought, which is called Agribright. And through the students' research, they found out that blue and red light were the most useful for the plants. Blue light allows the plants to grow and produces their leaves. Red light allows them to flower. So a lot of our flowering plants that we wanted to try and grow. They also learned a little bit about light, like why the leaves are green, and it's because, you know, it's reflecting off the green light and it's absorbing all the other colors. So through that, they were able to find out that this particular light here was in the 5,000 Kelvin range, which was our daylight, heading right into our daylight. So we needed a very specific type of light. They also went for this particular light because it allowed to be adjustable. So they rigged up a pulley system. So when the plants were very young, the light was down closer to where they were growing. And then as time went on, we were able to raise the light up to broadcast it more appropriately when they needed it. So using that, they created their first of a couple different hydroponics devices that you'll see here. We needed a pump, so this was the other pump that we ended up purchasing with the grant money as well, because the water needed to be stored and pumped up to the plants and then to trickle back down and to cycle on and off over and over again. So I was really proud teacher moment. At the bottom right of the screen here, you should see this weird looking cylinder with, it looks like 4 spouts coming off one side and 1 spout on the other. That was 3D printed by a student. So we had our own 3D printers as part of the STEAM program, and it's a water splitter. So as you'll see in the other 2 pictures above and to the left of the pump, this particular student decided that he was going to have 4 different vessels here to hold his plants. So he needed to get the water to 4 different areas. So he went ahead and made the measurements, took the inside diameter of the tubing here, and even put little barbs on the end here to make sure that that this water splitter would stay in. So we attached one end to the pump, the others into their respective plant lanes or rows, if you will, and then turned it on, and the plant and it provided water to the plants, and it worked pretty well. And he built this stand, as you can see in the first picture, and again, we were able to lower and raise that light as needed. The second design that students had and did were a little bit more productive. That student ran into some issues there along the way with the material costs and COVID and things of that nature. But this student was able to use an existing setup that we had and branch off of it, because now we were able to use the light and the pump. Oops, I'm sorry there. I went backwards when I should have stayed forwards. And as you can see on the picture on the right-hand side here, we have, these are jalapeno peppers that the students really wanted to grow. And the missing areas that you see in front of it were strawberries. The students really, really had a thing for strawberries and wanted to grow their own strawberries. So I said, sure, let's do it. So we bought them some strawberries, and unfortunately, due to the COVID in and out for some of the students, and we couldn't keep up with the proper nutrients, and the strawberries ended up dying off. But the peppers you can see up at the top left were just some of the many, 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 many peppers that they were able to produce. They took them home. Their mom, one student's mom made salsa with it, which tasted pretty good. So they were very excited and thrilled about that. as you can see here. Now, the other side of this was the aquaponics program. So the aquaponics program is where we added the fish. So the fish essentially create waste, and that waste then with the nitrates and the nitrites get absorbed into the plants, and the plants use that for particular food and the ammonia as well. So, and then because the plants are taking those out of the water, it kind of cleans the water. So then that water comes back down in and the fish can survive. So it's kind of like this nice circular kind of a setup. So this was a difficult one to set up because we had to find aquariums because again, we couldn't do large group projects due to the restrictions of COVID. So we were able to locate a couple of aquariums. We bought this, as you can see, quite different type of light. This one produces more red and blue than the other previous light did, and it was a smaller contraption. But the really nice thing about this is we were able to integrate this into our STARS room. And in West Geauga, they have, it's called STARS. It's a program with students with special needs are in the classroom and they learn and things of that nature. So we were able to introduce that into there for them. And then they were able to learn responsibility of feeding the fish. Then they made daily measurements of how the basil, I think they decided they wanted basil and lettuce. So they were able to measure that and they were on feeding schedules. So it was a lot of fun to see them use this aquaponics program or this aquaponics design that a student in my class had made and constructed here. So the future plans, where we first were inspired of this is a 200-gallon fish tank, essentially, and behind it is a grow bed. So we're hoping to, and you can see on the bottom left hand, all the plumbing that's going to go with it, is we're hoping to now, because of you guys and the students were super excited about it, take off and build this huge aquaponics and hydroponics program. So we have this grow bed with the fish. We're hoping when they did the aquaponics program before, the students were looking at buying bluegill so that we could use bluegill, and then at the end of the year have a fish fry so then they can bring it farm to table, if you will. So they were super excited about that. So we have that in place. We have what the students made last year coming into this year that we're going to be able to reuse. Some of the students were already talking about next year getting a grow wall and having the lights broadcast down onto the wall that you can grow the mint and all of the different herbs like that. And our goal is to work with the foods and nutrition teacher to supply him with fresh vegetables and herbs and things of that nature, and then maybe even get into our cafeteria as well. So, but with that, that's the end of the program. And we really, from West Geauga, just want to thank you guys so much for the opportunity for that grant. And it came at a perfect time. It really helped us through this COVID. So can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Alan. As you can see, even though we had a tough year with COVID, this was money well spent. And before we go to Natalie, I want to elaborate a little bit on how we structured our grant. Our grant was pretty much different from the other kinds of grants. In typical grants, you apply for the grant, you specifically say what you're going to spend money on and what you're going to do, and you line it all out in a very structured way. And then you do that, and then you ask for the money. And the grantor gives you the money. We did it backwards on purpose. We wanted to know what you were going to do with your funds. And we wanted you to, make a list of your expenditures roughly, and it was an approximation. And then we gave you the money up front and said that, we expect that you will have to make adjustments. So when we did that, we were kind of gambling, would they do what they were supposed to do with the money? And as you can see, we're pretty pleased about what Alan has done. And that brings me to Natalie, who did several different things with her money. And I'm going to let her explain those kinds of things and any of the adjustments that she made with her funds too. So Natalie Hudak from St. Helens School, welcome and take off with it.
Oh, she's muted.
Natalie, unmute.
You're muted, Natalie.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Like Dave said, unlike Alan, I didn't have just one big project that I used the grant funding for, but I had a lot of smaller projects. And part of this is because before becoming a classroom teacher, I spent about 6 years in the field of outdoor education, working at different parks and environmental centers and teaching in the outdoors. And all of those facilities that I worked at were so well equipped with different materials and supplies that a lot of the funding that I used was to purchase some similar things for my classroom so that students could gain some hands-on experience with that. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, just so I can share with you a few of the different projects that the funds helped with. So just in general, you know, I had done a little bit of outdoor education with my students before, but I knew that with COVID this year that the best way for us to continue to be able to do labs and collaborative learning was going to be to take it outdoors, where we wouldn't have to worry so much about air circulation and all of that. And so, you know, continuing the goals of outdoor education with like connecting with nature and having some real authentic use of scientific tools, I kind of just took off with this. St. Helen is a really small Catholic school. And so we have just one class per grade level. So consequently, I teach 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, all science, which led to a wide array of different topics that I teach. And you'll see that in the projects. So the first thing that we augmented was our bird watching program. The Foundation for Geauga Parks, they have had this program ongoing for quite a while now called Nature Scopes, where every 5th grader in the county gets a pair of binoculars and some field guides. And so we've been participating in that, and the students love it. But I found in the last couple of years that we were not very successful at attracting birds to our schoolyard. And so that was my first project, was to get some birds. So the students actually helped me by doing some research on, okay, what kind of different feeders and what kind of feed attract birds. And they made proposals about what we should get. And based on their suggestions, you know, we ended up with a couple of different seed feeders. And we ended up with some suet, sunflower seed we found was going to attract the most birds. And then they also found that cayenne pepper, adding that to your seed, was a good way to keep the squirrels out of your feeders. And so you can kind of see the students here. We kind of watched from across the parking lot, and we set up our station at the side of the parking lot. And, you know, different families within the school have commented that they love coming to pick up their kids after school and seeing what kind of birds we have. We succeeded in attracting such a wide variety of different things from there's I think a northern flicker there on the little church feeder, but we had, you know, juncos and titmice and cardinals and, you know, all sorts of different birds that popped in throughout the winter and on into the spring. We also purchased a game to play outdoors, which was basically like a giant board game that we set up in the parking lot with different stations that let the students simulate the migration of a bird. So they would roll the dice, and then they would go to, you know, however many squares forward and do the action that was on the corresponding card. And they had a great time playing this game outdoors and learning about bird migration challenges along the way. The Nature Scopes program with the binoculars, they typically end the year with a field trip to the rookery. And unfortunately, our 5th graders were not able to do this year. And so I purchased some pond nets and some ice cube trays so that they could do some sampling and catch some small insects and larvae from our pond that we have at school. I didn't know this before the Nature Scopes program, but binoculars, you can actually flip them upside down like you see the in the upper right picture. And when you turn your binoculars upside down, they work like a microscope. And so the students were able to make observations and expand their knowledge of aquatic food chains. And they were really impressed at all the different things that we found living in this tiny little pond next to our school. And of course, they tried to catch some of the frogs that were there too. One other thing that I purchased for the 5th graders that we didn't get a chance to use were some owl pellets. I was nervous that our end of the year field trip activity wasn't going to work out, so I wanted an indoor option. And when I've done this with students in the past, they've always loved it. So I'm sure next year's 5th graders will appreciate the opportunity to pull apart these owl pellets and see what the owl had for dinner before they expelled these. Our 6th graders have a really large geology unit, and so I had intended to buy soil probes in order to pull a sample out of different areas of our schoolyard and observe how soil forms differently on like the hillside, the lawn, and the forest. But I actually found that the Geauga County Soil and Water Conservation District has some really nice ones that they lend out to teachers. And so, I asked if, hey, can I use that money that I was going to use on soil probes for something different? And I just totally appreciate, Barb and Dave, your flexibility and your trust in us as teachers to kind of adjust and move on to something different. So we ended up purchasing, in the left picture, you can kind of see the arrow pointing to a pH and moisture probe. We purchased several of those and also some trowels so that the students could dig up a loosened soil sample. And we did these like hand texturing activities so that they could determine the size of the particles in the soil. We also purchased a set of plastic clipboards because those are way better than the brown cardboardish ones in terms of getting dirt off of them and keeping moisture off your papers when you're outdoors. And the 5th graders also got to use those trowels when we did a forest ecosystem exploration later in the year. They were able to move some leaf litter around, and I was just so impressed at the wide variety of different organisms that they were able to find in our little forest. Salamanders and several types of worms and some different insects. And you can see they're wearing winter coats, so it wasn't, spring hadn't quite sprung yet when we were doing this. It was still pretty chilly out. For our 7th graders, I had done some water quality monitoring with them before with some supplies that we had gotten through the Great Lakes National Programming Office, but my supplies were running low. And so the grant funding helped me to purchase some additional water quality testing kits and also some tablets that were used. You can see the test tubes. The way that they work is you kind of get a water sample, fill it up, and then add the little tablet. It looks like a little aspirin, actually. And once it dissolves, you compare the color to a scale. This one is for pH. And then in the next picture, you can see the dissolved oxygen one. And so then the students are able to run these tests for dissolved oxygen, nitrates, phosphates, and pH. And we were able to compare our little pond on site. And then actually we're right across the street from Punderston State Park. And so without even having to get these kids on a bus, we were able to test some different water sources and compare that to what they'd been learning in class about, the properties of water and how solutions work. And different sources of water pollution in the area in terms of farms and things like that, and how that fits into our local watersheds. And so, having the extra water quality test kits was just great because the kids love doing this, and having everybody be able to get at least one turn was awesome. The 7th graders also have a really large weather unit. And so we purchased this smart weather station for the school. And they thought this was the coolest thing that we were able to set this up and connect it to this live kind of like dashboard that shows current weather conditions right on site. We were also able to connect it to through the school Wi-Fi to the cloud. And get our school's data on weather underground. And so we would go outside during this unit and make observations outdoors, and then come in and pull up the website data from our weather station and see, well, what did we observe about the clouds and how does that compare to the air pressure? And what kind of fronts do we think are coming through based on this data? So the students really, they liked being able to step outside for half of a class period and come back in and just kind of have that be a little break from their day to do some time in nature and science at the same time, with all the different cloud types and cloud covers and types of precipitation when we went outside to do our data. We also did a lab related to this weather unit where we built our own anemometers. So anemometers measure wind speed. It was a little chilly the day that we went out to test them, but I had purchased with grant funds a couple of handheld anemometers so that we could calibrate our homemade ones to how many spins on that was equivalent to 5 mile an hour winds. And so they have a fun time doing this project as well. Have a few other ideas because I do have a little bit left over. We had proposed a worm composting program, and there was a delay in shipment on that and didn't come in until the end of the year. So that's another thing that'll come up next year, but just very much appreciate the support of Protect Geauga Parks in terms of being able to just really add to a lot of different programs and have a lot of extra days of outdoor learning for the students this year. And they were great. They loved it, even when we had to put on the winter coats in order to do it.
Alan, Natalie, thank you. There was incredible presentations. I love it when you do prep and then you go out in the field and you come back and bring your data back and do analysis and collating and putting it all together. And for high school people to learn that, and for people down in the 5th grade all the way up to the 8th grade to learn that kind of skill, and using the natural sciences to accomplish that, that's pretty incredible. So we're, at least I'm certainly well pleased with what we did this year. So thank you both for what you've done. And I hope that we'll be able to reproduce this again in this upcoming year. And that'll depend on the generous contributions of our supporters to Protect Geauga Parks. Barb, you're going to finish up, right?
I think, Anne, do you want to see if anybody has questions?
Sure. If you have a question, I think we're a small enough group. You don't need to raise your hand, but just unmute your microphone and just jump in. And I'll start with a really quick question. And this is for Alexa. Alexa, I didn't catch what you said about what your double major was going to be in. The second one was environmental something, but I didn't hear the first one. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's biology and environmental science.
Great, thank you.
I don't have a question particularly, but I'm feeling very good about these teachers, because to me, this is the way they're teaching is the way people learn, and will bring these young people. They're so talented that keep their interest and have them think of the things that they devise. It's pretty amazing. So the teachers and the students, it gives me hope. Thank you for this. And this is my idea of education, and the hands-on, really important. Thank you.
And with no more questions?
Well, I have one
John,
question.
go ahead.
John Augustine, for Ryan McMullough. Nice job, everyone. That's all I can say. Very excellent. Ryan, I was wondering if you've ever read any of Rachel Carson's book. I know you were interested in studying marine biology. Have you read any of his books? She's most noted for Silent Spring, the book on pesticide harm. Is Ryan there?
I haven't read any of those, but I am actually in the process of making a summer reading list, so I'll definitely keep that in mind.
They're wonderful books. Her first book was Beyond the Sea Wind, I believe it was called. And that's just a one, she's a wonderful writer, and I recommend that you enjoy them. I'm sure you would enjoy them. Beyond the
what's the
Sea,
name again?
When the Edge of the Sea, and The Sea Around Us. Those were the 3 books she wrote on. She was a marine biologist. That was her main occupation. But okay, thanks again for your job. Good job
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening. This was really quite inspiring, I think, to all of us who are here this evening. So thank you to the teachers, the students. We look forward to hearing all good things about you. And if you need anything from us, you let us know. And we'll be calling to recruit you as soon as we can find you.
Before we go, call or email us and tell us what you're doing. That teachers and students. We'd love to see pictures. We'd love to hear